You are listening to the Living Room Confessional podcast. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Living Room Confessional. I am your host, Courtney. So this episode, I wrote it out. If you can see me on YouTube, it's on my phone. Because I have a lot of points that I want to hit. I'm going to be looking down a lot. Please bear with me. But I've wanted to do this episode since actually 2024. And I couldn't find the words and I couldn't get the episode together because I honestly had so much to say. And the petty version of me wanted to come out and call out people's names. So we had to put that to bed. But I finally been able to put this entire episode together, and I'm not going to read it to you. We're going to talk about it, but I have written it out. So there's just a lot that I want to cover. This episode is called Revealing Your Character. I think we've already talked about this. I can't quite be sure, but I've recorded quite a few episodes already. But last year in 2024, at the beginning of the year, my character was attacked on all sides. Like, I couldn't get away from it. It was friendships, family, old relationships, and they just came out of nowhere. I've tried to talk about this in a way that is palatable, and just everything that I'm going to say is very much blended with my faith. Let me put it that way. And pretty much because my character was attacked, it immediately made me like run to my faith and look and see like what was wrong. While I don't have like a faith checklist of what your character is supposed to look like, I find that God has been refining my character for like the last couple of years. And so I really needed to come to terms with who I am. I've done a lot of episodes in the past where I've told you to take stock of who you are and really get to know who that is. I don't know in those episodes if I talked about my faith, but I find my identity in Christ. My relationship with Him really allows me to see who I need to be and what needs to change. And we'll get more into that later. Those are still very good episodes. If you are not a Christian and you're watching this podcast, those episodes I think are very enlightening, but I think I have a different take now. So there are probably certain things that I would change, but it's still a really good episode if you want to go listen to it. I'm going to do my best to get this out. So I believe that knowing yourself is easiest when you know who created you, when you get to know God. God has really shown me as I've built my relationship with Him and revealed things to me about my character, things that were good, but things that were also not so good that I've really had to work on. But something that's come to the forefront that's so important to me is my integrity. I had a lot of people telling me who they thought that I was last year when they were attacking my character and trying to tell me that I had no integrity. But obviously I have a foundation in Christ and I know who created me and who He created me to be. And while He's still revealing things to me, I have a firm foundation in who I am in Him thus far. So I was able to write off a lot of the things that people were saying about me as completely false. As I always say, I am human. So in some instances, I was able to kind of like let it roll off. And in other instances, I was just kind of like, this really hurts me today. So that's why I was on such an emotional roller coaster. And I actually took such a long break last year, was because I really just needed to look at myself and ask myself the question, like, who are you? Who are you becoming? Like, what version of you has this person been encountering and dealing with? Could what they're saying be true, or are they kind of pulling things out of thin air? The simple answer was, it was not true. Pretty much during that time away, I was in my Bible and I was doing podcast homework. I did quotes. If you can't see me, I got to get used to this. But yeah, and I talked to my therapist quite a bit. I even had emergency sessions, which I don't do. So when I call on like a Tuesday and I'm like, I need to talk to you now, he's like, okay. Like, he's like, I will get you in. And so I'm like super grateful for him. But these are all the things that I had to lean on. My family, in certain instances, they were involved in certain things. But What I realized during a lot of this is that God was trying to separate me from people, but because I'm going in a different direction in my life and they can't come, but I was holding on to them. So a lot of the pain that I was going through was, I want to say, because I was being stubborn and allowing these situations to open up because I didn't let these people go when I had the opportunity to do so. What God actually showed me was their true intentions. And I got to see, because we don't see the conversations that are had behind closed doors. And so God has a way of, when he wants us to let go of somebody, of showing us who they truly are, the parts of them that he can only see, that they think that we'll never be able to actually call them on or see come out of them. And when they do, it is so hard, because everything that you thought that this person was to you and how important this person may be to you, you realize that they don't really care about you. And that's a really hard pill to swallow, especially when it's family. Things that I learned is people can only meet you to the extent that they've met themselves. They don't have the ability to stretch if they have never gotten to a place intellectually, emotionally, even physically in some instances. And so we delay, I think, promises when we try to hang on to people who can't actually go with us, because mentally they're not there, intellectually they're not there, and they're going to hold you back because they want you to stay where they are, because obviously we can't pull them forward because they're not in a place where they can actually come forward. There's work that has to be done. And I think that's a hard thing about, like, in friendships and things like that, when you grow apart. A lot of us know it because we see that shift. You might feel that shift, but you probably ignored it and you just wrote it off as maybe a one-off. But when the true signs come through and you hear that they've been talking smack about you behind your back, or they're not as honest as you thought they were, their integrity is not intact, or they have pretty much a hidden agenda. And I think that with me, I always forget that my friends are allowed to have friends, don't get me wrong, but I always forget that there are people on the other side that they're talking to that I don't know, whether that's coworkers, their family members, or just other friends in their life that I haven't met. And it's always interesting, and it was very interesting seeing how these people had a completely different vantage point of who I am. And it's always fun to let them meet me, and then they're like, you're nothing like what this person said. And then it makes them realize, oh God, if this person is talking about them in this way, I need to really be careful, because they could be talking about me in that way to anybody else. So I think I have done an episode on doing, like, your list for your friends and your people, and making sure that you're not carrying people along with you at this season of your life, and they should have gotten out of the car a long time ago. And I think a lot of times we lose progress because we just don't want to let go of the things that we are comfortable and familiar with from other seasons. And this includes people. I always want you to remember that it's okay for people to think that they know you. They may know you to a small extent. I always tell people, you know the version of me that I want you to know. And I don't say that like I'm being fake, but there are certain parts of my life that I don't share with you, because while you may be like, this is my best friend, I'm like, you're an acquaintance. And while I'm not trying to be rude, you're not getting access to this part of my life. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that I don't go through this many issues. And I think the most important thing is that even when people think that they know who you are, God knows who you are, because God knows your heart, and he sees the parts of you that they don't see. He gets to the heart of the matter. And that's the beautiful thing about faith and cultivating an intimate relationship with him. There is nothing that you can't hide from him. No part of you that he does not want or doesn't want to see. And everything that you go through, you can always take it to him, and it's never too much. I think one of the hardest things about what I went through last year is that in all the words that were spoken to me, I was trying to find, obviously, a lot of them were being very direct. But for me, I kind of felt like there might be hidden meaning in the words. And so I was trying to go through and figure out, like, What were you not telling me? Was this coming from somewhere else? And it's just something that you have to do. I don't know. I couldn't believe that it was happening. So I had to sift through every single detail of that conversation. And I think the trouble with that is I think a lot of us know this. When you're going through something, and like even if it's in a relationship where you had an argument with your parents or your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you try to think back to everything that you guys just argued about or every word that was said, and you overanalyze every single detail. And then at some point, it's like you're tweaking the words in your brain. And at the end of the day, it's like you either don't know what you argued about, you don't remember everything that was said. And if there was a point made, you've probably changed that point to something that's more digestible or palatable for where you are. And that was my problem. But this really caused me to think about how much I blindly trust people and how much we care about people that don't care about us. We love to call people, oh, that's my sister, that's my cousin, that's my BFF, and give them like these statuses in our lives, but we sometimes don't even know who we're dealing with because we're so quick to jump on the bandwagon when we like somebody that we stop being careful and we just let our guard down. And I don't think there's anything completely wrong with that, but I think that caused for us to do some self-reflection of why we are so drawn to these types of people and why we are so quick to form relationships where it may actually just be an acquaintance situation, or this could be somebody that's passing through that we've now clung to. I mean, like there could be a situation where you want something they have, you see something about them that you like, or you're aspiring to do something that they do. And while I don't think you should always think of those people as friends, I think relationships can be built over time. But something my therapist always gets on me about is calling people my friends. So I've been in North Carolina for 2 years now. And I finally get to call people my friends in his office because I would say it last year and he was like, no, you don't know them yet. It hasn't even been a year. And he was just like, they could have different intentions. They could move. You don't truly know who they are. And you haven't spent enough time with them to guarantee that if you needed help at midnight, would they come? A friend would come. An acquaintance will not come. So you really need to make sure you're compartmentalizing people properly. There's nothing wrong with having a really good acquaintance that you hang out with all the time. It's not like you're introducing them to say, hey, this is so-and-so my acquaintance, rather than saying everybody like, hey, this is so-and-so my friend. I think that titles are very important to people, myself included. I've been in that spot where I'm like, what, who am I to you? And y'all know what I'm talking about, like in relationships and stuff. We don't need to do that. Not in friendships. Be very careful what you label people as, because if they are a short-term person in your life, stop giving them spaces that they're not supposed to hold. Stop giving them titles that don't belong to them. Because I think with the title comes expectations. And if you're expecting somebody who views you as an acquaintance, or that is actually an acquaintance, to hold space as a friend, and then you need them at midnight and you call them and they're like, dude, I just met you like 2 weeks ago. No, I'm not coming to your house at midnight to help you. Call your mom. Like, you shouldn't be shocked. Like, let's be real. And so I have this theory, and it's not my theory, but it's a theory that I've kind of taken and run with. And it's the minivan theory. And I think it's fantastic. And it goes like this. You're in a minivan. The minivan is your life. The minivan has 3 rows. So you've got the front seat, the middle seat, and the back seat. The person in the front seat, those are the people that influence you, that give you advice and you actually take it. You listen. Those are the people, the 5 people that they say, or is it 3 or 5? People that influence you and who you are in your day-to-day the most, because you talk to them constantly. These people have a front row seat to great things that happen, bad things that happen. These are your people. Middle seat. These are the people that I would actually call friends. These are the friends that you don't talk to every day. The people that y'all can go months, weeks without seeing each other, and then kind of pick up where you left off. I think they call and they check on you. They genuinely care about you. And they are the people, like if I was engaged, I'd call them. They wouldn't be my first call, but they might be like the third or fourth or fifth call. They're people that hold space in my life, but they don't have my attention 24/7. I think that the backseat is where a lot of people should be, but they're not there yet. So a lot of people, that everybody that goes in the back seat, those are people that are acquaintances. These are people that are just passing through. These are people you would never take advice from, but they are fun to go out to dinner with every once in a while and to catch up with. They may be people that you have something specific in common with and you only call them to do or talk about that one specific thing. They are people that hold the least amount of space and have next to no influence in your life, but they're still good people to have in your life. At any point, someone can change seats. But for the people that are actively in your life, you really need to make sure that you have them in the right seat. And I always say, if you are in the back seat, you're the closest to be booted out of the car or kicked out the door. So if you are in the middle seat, you're probably like my childhood friend. You are probably a cousin. You are probably a coworker that I absolutely love to have lunch with. And if I actually left the company, we would still be friends. If you're in the front seat, you're a mentor, you're a parent, you're somebody who's helping me build my business. You might be a business partner. You're somebody who is a very positive influence on me that I interact with all the time. Your pastor, if y'all don't have each other's phone numbers, they're not a front seat person. And I'm giving this as an example because pastors and people like that, they have impact. And so I think we need to be very specific about this. I'm not trying to have anybody go to their pastor and be like, you're my best friend now. You're a front seat. No. The front seat is reserved for the people that you can call at midnight. I need help. I'm there. The people that I need help with this business. I need you to sit with me and help me analyze this. They're there. The people that my mom died. They're there. The people I need advice on something very sensitive and intimate and important. That's them. Middle seat, we talk. I love you. Like you are my friend. You are somebody that I enjoy catching up with. Somebody that I talk to, maybe not regularly, but as often as I possibly can. You're somebody that I would send a Christmas card to. An acquaintance, you're in the back seat. You're not getting a Christmas card. I don't know if I'm going to talk to you very often. We might hang out here or there. If I don't see you for a year to 2 years, I might have a fleeting thought, but I may not pick up the phone and call you. But I may have a thought and hope you're doing well. That's the back seat. I hope this made sense and I didn't offend anybody because that's not the point. But that is my minivan theory. You have 3 rows, put people in their spots. Now, that does not mean that an acquaintance can't become a major influence later in your life and a major influence can't become an acquaintance in a new season. Everybody can move around, but I think you really need to understand where they should be right now and treat them as such. In Romans 7:22 through 23, Paul talks about his sinful nature. And even though his intentions are good, he still winds up sinning. Sinning. In this context, people may not have unfavorable motives, but due to human nature, we become envious, we become jealous, we become deceitful, and sometimes we don't actually mean to. And people need to make sure that they're giving other people grace because we all do it. No one is exempt from it. So I wanted to put that in there because out of everything that I've said, you have to understand where people are coming from, and we all have a sinful nature and we are all flawed beings. And so nobody is going to be perfect. And so I know I'm talking about acquaintances and being in the back seat and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the people that I went through things with, it doesn't necessarily make them bad people. I just think in regards to me, they made bad decisions and they said very hurtful things. To take that in stride and remember that they're just human. And while I don't want to interact with these people anymore, and our relationships have pretty much become non-existent at this point, I still have grace for these people. I want no ill will towards them. And I don't think you should either. I think a beautiful thing that we forget to do is forgive. And while this is not an episode about forgiveness, it's actually about character. These are character flaws. As much as integrity is a huge part of who I am and what I carry with me, people are flawed. I get jealous. I get envious. I catch it sometimes. Sometimes I don't. And it doesn't come until later. I kind of realize, like, oh, maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was me. And I was being envious of something that she did or accomplishment that she had. So I think we also need to put that into perspective. And I didn't want to leave that out. Every person is not like this, but there are some who you'll notice the change in, and you'll need to give them grace. As your character is improving and your faith is maturing, you're going to start to notice these things. As you are being refined and things like that, God is going to test you. People are going to test you. And I think that something we forget is God will allow people to test you. Like I said, God tests you and people test you, but a lot of times he's allowing them. They may be a part of his test for you. I think that's something we need to remember, is that every person is not like this. Every person is not jealous of you. Every person is not envious of you. But these are things that you might want to take into consideration. And if you see them within yourself or someone else, make sure that you are having some grace for them. As your character is improving, as your faith is maturing, you're being refined. God is going to test you. And this is something that I love, but I also don't like most of the times when I'm like actually in it, when I'm in a test. And I think that a lot of times we forget that God is allowing people to do these things to see, so he can see if you've actually changed. Because as your character develops and you grow, he's going to put a test in front of you before he allows you to elevate, to make sure that you don't fall back into old patterns. And for me, I've had a lot of tests where I fall in an old pattern, so I know what I'm talking about. But God. So I know what I'm talking about, but at the same time, it's the fact that he's actually doing this to see if you have grown, so that he can bless you with maybe more, or take you to a new season or a new place, or develop you for something new that he has for you. He has to make sure that the changes are actually implemented and they're sticking. So I think that's a beautiful thing about our character. As we change, you're going to notice things about other people. You're going to notice things about yourself and how your character has developed and changed. And you may go through issues. And I think a lot of the issues that I went through were because my character was changing so much, so quickly. I think that it was a part of my refining process. God was really kind of shaking things up in my life and seeing if I would actually do the things that I said I was going to do. I was like, God, I surrender this to you. And like, I know I'm having issues in this relationship. I give this person to you. And God, I'm so excited about to walk forward. And if this person isn't supposed to be with me, God, remove them. But then when he actually does try to remove them, and I won't let him go, he's just like, okay, do you trust me or not? You said that you were like ready to let him go. And so for me, he had to show me the other side, the things that I could not see, so that he could show me how much I had changed. Because there are certain things that maybe 5-6 years ago, I would have actually put up with the things that they said. But now in this season, this character of this Courtney, we're not going to do that. And so in that, he was able to see, like, I was able to show God, like, I'm growing. And he was able to see that the growth took, and like, I'm good now. Like, I know I'm talking about something that happened last year, but I'm actually good now. And while I prayed for those people, I wish them well, it was a bit of a tug of war for a minute there. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. Like at some, like, I know this sounds dramatic, but there were points where I was just like my life is falling apart. Like, Lord, what are you doing to me? Like, why are they like this? Are they sick? Like, but he's just like, no, they can't go with you. And so you need to leave them here. And this is the way that he did. Those tests came in quick, but I made the decision to be obedient. And I kid you not, everything just worked out how it should. I'm in a much better place now, and I can talk about it, and it doesn't bother me. And so I think I liken this kind of to my abstinence journey. So this may be TMI for some people. So if this bothers you, I'm sorry. But this actually might help somebody. So there you go. I decided to be abstinent 2 years ago. And the minute I made that decision, the mosquitoes started buzzing. And by mosquitoes, I mean men. They started buzzing. Nobody talks to me. I'm like, well, that's true. Nobody talks to me. And so when they all started buzzing, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I have a glow up all of a sudden that I don't recall? Like, what happened? And it was because I said no to something, and then I started getting tested and tested and tested. And for 2 years, I was able to resist because I knew why I was doing what I was doing. But the minute I did not remember why I started that abstinence journey, I fell. And I fell hard. I tried to run from God. I was so disappointed in myself. I was so angry. And I came back to my journey, but at the same time, God reminded me, you still need me in this season. You may have done this for so long by yourself. Yes, I changed your character. Yes, you did good for 2 years, but you can't do this without me. So that was a huge reminder for me. And I think the same plays in relationships with people. As we change, as we develop, as things that were important to us at one point become important, God is going to reveal our character in that moment when He starts testing us and we realize we're not doing as well as we thought, or we're doing better than we thought. And so I think that's the beauty of the test. Like, yes, you are going to fall. You're going to fail some of them, but some of them you are going to pass. You're going to pass with flying colors, and you're not going to know how you did it. But when God has His hand on your life, there's nothing that you cannot do without Him. I think it's important to say that, or remind people, you have a cheering session for everything that goes well and great in your life. But you also have a cheering section for everything that goes wrong. When you fail, there's always somebody who's going to celebrate you and try to keep you down because you didn't do what you set out to do. And they're going to think that they know you, and they are going to try to tear down who God created you to be and what He put on the inside of you. That is not for them to decide. That is for Him to decide. And when God calls out your character and reveals who you are in Him, everything you do has purpose. Everything you do is part of a plan. Every outcome, whether favorable or unfavorable, He can use to build your character and reveal who He created you to be. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me to swallow when I fell and when I had any kind of failure. I felt like I messed up so bad. I could not possibly be who I thought I was and who I thought I was becoming because now I had a blemish. But God doesn't expect us to be perfect. We are imperfect beings. It goes back to what Paul said. We have that sinful nature, and it's not just about being jealous or envious. We are imperfect, and we are going to make mistakes regardless of how good our intentions are. And we have to understand that God sees our hearts and knows the intent behind it. A lot of times, like, I'll say something and it just doesn't land. Like, the intention behind it was to be funny, but if you get offended, like, that wasn't what was supposed to happen. Like, it happens. I sometimes have a dry sense of humor, and sometimes I have a very weird sense of humor. And sometimes I'm like right in the middle. And so sometimes, depending on who I'm talking to, it might not land because you might not find that situation or thing funny. But then I might go to the next person and they find it absolutely hilarious. That doesn't change who I am, obviously, because I just told the same joke to somebody else. It doesn't change who I am. But it just makes me take stock of who I'm talking to, who I'm dealing with, and the differences between us. And I think that our differences are what make us great as people, as countries, as nations, as communities, and even as Christians. And so as God reveals your character to you, stop thinking that you have to be perfect and you have to get it right every single time and you have to look like the person next to you, because that's not who you were created to be. You are an individual. You were built to be an individual, to reflect Christ in the way that he created you to reflect him. One of my favorite quotes is an Oscar Wilde quote, and it's, don't try to be anybody else because everyone else is taken. You can only be yourself. Your character is a crucial piece in defining and understanding who you are. But when you really understand whose you are, things are going to change drastically. After years of living life for myself and trying to figure out who I was in the world, I finally found my faith. And with my foundation in Christ and finding my identity in Christ, I finally have like a handle, I feel like, for the most part. I mean, he throws me some curveballs, but I have a better handle on understanding who I am and who God has called me to be. And I'm able to walk differently and talk differently and do things different and do things better and not be so hard on myself and have grace and leave space for other people. And I don't feel so insecure and things like that. God has really done a number on my character. If honestly, if you knew me in my 20s and then you met me today, you'd be like, y'all are not the same person. I'm literally just a better version of Courtney Walker. Like, there's no better way to put it. Yes, I was that version of me in my 20s. Yes, I am a more refined and defined version of myself in my 30s. Gosh, I'm almost at my 40s, let's be real. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without having a foundation in Christ and having my faith be my guide to all things. God will reveal your character to you in due time, but sometimes you have to go through lessons, and they're not always easy depending on the season that you're in. But if you just stick with Him, He will reveal your character and you'll be able to live your life as He intended for you to do it, and it will always be better than you expected it to be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I loved writing this episode. And the funny thing is half of the stuff I wrote, I didn't even talk about because there are certain things that just needed to be said. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next episode. And until then, bye.